Hey y'all, so I hope you are having a wonderful Saturday. Maybe some time to get some schoolwork done, go outside, it's really beautiful. But I'm going to be covering chapter 6, which is Nonverbal Messages. In addition to this video, I will also be posting the PowerPoint slides that come with the textbook for both chapter 5 and chapter 6. So if you're wanting to review for your quiz maybe a little more in depth, then you are welcome to do that. So in talking about the quiz, we will no longer be having exam 2. I sent out an updated schedule. If not, it's on Blackboard on the announcement page, but we will be doing it as quiz 2. So on Tuesday, today's the 4th. So on Monday, probably Monday evening, I will be posting a quiz. Once that quiz goes live, I'll send you an email and you have 48 hours to complete it. It's something you have to do in one sitting, but it won't be too hard and it'll only be about 15 to 30 points. I haven't fully decided on a number. So today we're going to talk about chapter 6, nonverbal messages. So we'll first be talking about the principles of nonverbal messages, and these will be a little bit more abbreviated than the ones for verbal. And then we'll be talking about the 10 channels of nonverbal. So, and then there will be another bonus opportunity. So first, I want to talk about the principles of nonverbal communication. So kind of what does nonverbal communication do? So nonverbal communication is communication without words, and it could be using gestures, it could be using eye contact, it could be what we're wearing. Those are all types of nonverbal communication. But the first thing I want you to know is that they interact with the verbal messages. So if I say, I'm so happy today, and I'm smiling, the smiling reinforces that I am happy and that what I'm saying is true. So the first principle is they interact with the verbal messages. The second is that they help us to manage impressions. Managing impressions. So they help us to be liked. We give people hugs. They help us to be believed. If we're lying, we're probably not going to try and twitch, or we're going to use really focused eye contact to help us get help. We might, if you ever been somewhere and you didn't speak the same language as someone, so you might have pointed. That's trying to get help with nonverbal messages. And to describe ourselves. This shirt is a Living 9 t-shirt. It describes that I work there. That's something I'm communicating about myself with my apparel. So they help us to manage impressions. The next is that nonverbal messages help us form relationships. So I think this one is kind of obvious. When you meet someone for the first time, you shake their hand. When someone becomes your friend, you resort to that hug maybe. So you can think about this in the context of a romantic relationship. When you first meet somebody, you're not going to probably kiss them right away, but that helps to form the relationship over time. The fourth is that it helps to structure our conversation. So if I'm head nodding while you're talking, that helps you know that I'm following along, going with what you're saying. That would be an example of how nonverbal messages help structure conversation. The fifth is that we use nonverbal messages to influence other people, and we also use them to deceive people. So kind of going back to how we talked about how verbal language is used, nonverbal is used in that same way. And then the last one is that they're crucial for being able to express our emotions. So those are the 6 principles. And next, and I'm going to spend a lot more time on this, is the 10 channels of nonverbal communication. And the first is body communication. So this is how we're using our movements and how we use the space that's around us. So first aspect, body appearance, how we look. How we look kind of determines how other people see us and what we're communicating. It also might reveal our ethnicity. It might give clues to our nationality. It might give clues to our gender. It might give clues to messages about ourselves, how we wear our hair, things like that. Those are all ways that we use our bodies to communicate messages about us. How we use gestures. Body gestures are also known as kinesics. And so we use these in several different ways. We use them to translate, so to stand for actual things or serve as emblems. So I'm giving you a thumbs up. That's an okay. If I am pointing to something, I'm pointing to my guinea pig cage. Maybe reverse flips me on. I'm using that as an illustrator to illustrate this is where the guinea pig cage is. If I am smiling, that's called an affect display. That means that I'm communicating some sort of emotional meaning. Today is a great day. The smile helps to display that. Regulators is when we're kind of using them to maintain some type of communication. So earlier when I was talking about the head nod, that would be an example of a regulator. And then adapters. So self-adapters. This is like how if I'm nervous, my hair's not down today, but if I play with my hair when I'm nervous, that would be an example of a self-adapter. The next is facial communication. So facial communication kind of falls into body communication, but it's a little bit separate. And so scientists have shown that there are 8 different emotions that we express with our faces. So happiness, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, disgust, contempt, and interest. And so these are our primary, pure single emotions that we reflect with our faces. But when we think of facial expression, I want you to think that the most important aspect is a smile. So smiles genuinely express our feelings. They help distinguish how we feel. And research shows that you actually most of the time can't tell when someone's fake smiling and real smiling. So a real smile and a fake smile both seem to be appreciated by people. So smiles generally signal that there is a lack of dominance, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's just what the research has shown. And also women are more likely to smile in the research. So we also use facial communication to do things like to simulate emotions. So maybe I'm sad. If I smile, it naturally moves those muscles up and it makes me more likely to feel less sad. We use it to mask. So say you got a Christmas present and you didn't want it, or you're disappointed, you didn't get the promotion you wanted. You might mask those emotions with your face. That way you're not communicating that sense of disappointment. To intensify, to make people understand you better, or also to de-intensify, or to completely neutralize. If you don't want to show any emotion, you might control that with your face. So that's 2, facial communication. The third is eye communication. So a lot of this has to do with eye contact and eye avoidance. So eye contact is used to help us seek feedback. So if we're looking for someone to answer a question, then I might give you some eye contact like I do in class. Or you use it to inform the other person that it's time for them to talk. Another way we use this is that they signal the nature of their relationship. So people typically, when they're listening, they have a high level of eye contact, and then when they're speaking, there's less eye contact. So it can signal visual dominance as a behavior. The other is eye avoidance. So this is when you are avoiding looking at other people. So you might be doing that to communicate that you don't care about what they're talking about, or that you're not listening. Or I think the easiest example of this is if you're on campus and you're walking around and you see someone that you know, but you don't want to say hi, then most of the time you'll glance down. That way you don't make eye contact with them. That is called that is called eye avoidance. Sorry. Civil inattention is when we don't want to disrupt other people, so we avoid eye contact. For example, if we're sitting on the bus and we don't want to start a conversation with someone, or we want to respect their privacy, we won't make eye contact with them. The fourth is space communication, and this doesn't mean like outer space. This means how we use the space around us. So this again is part of kind of body communication extended, and this is called proxemics. So basically there are 4 distances that we use. The first is an intimate distance. So this is when someone is within 0 to 18 inches to you. They're either touching you or they're really close to you. The next would be personal distance. So this is kind of your personal bubble. So I want to think 18 feet or 18 inches. Ooh, not 18 feet. 18 inches to 4 feet. So maybe the radius between you and another desk is kind of the way to think this in a classroom. Then you have social distance, which is 4 to 12, which our social distancing requires us to do 6 feet. So just a reminder that Andy Bashir has to stay 6 feet away. Don't want any of y'all to get the coronavirus. That would be, so stay at a social distance. You start to lose the visual detail when you're at this distance, but people can still hear you. And then public distance is 12 to 25 feet. So if you see someone across the street, that would be a public distance. You also, in addition to having the way that we use proxemic distances, you can also use territoriality to communicate things. So there are 3 types of territory: primary, secondary, and public. So primary territory are things that are just yours. So this is my room. This is my primary territory. The desk that you sit in class, that's your primary territory. Actually, scratch that. Scratch that. Just think of your room. That is an example of secondary territories. So secondary territories, the example is your classroom desks. So these don't necessarily belong to you, but they are associated with you. That would be a secondary territory. Or this would be your lunch table in high school, or your favorite spot in the library. That would be a secondary territory. And then the third is public territories, which is basically things that are open to all people. So parks, beaches, malls, things like that. The next is one of my favorite to talk about, and let me grab an example of this. So I talked about my shirt earlier, and that is an example of this next one, which is artifactual communication. So artifactual communication is communication via objects made by human hands. So this includes things like color. So I often wear a lot of red. That's because I love WKU. It's my favorite color, and it's also the color of my sorority. So that is kind of how I use that to communicate that it's my favorite. Clothing and body adornment, again, shirts with slogans. When I'm dressed up in class, I may be trying to present a more professional image. That would be an example of clothing adornment. Body piercings, tattoos, and then space organization, so how we organize our space. And what I think is probably the best example is your laptop. So if you want to take a look at your laptop, I know some people aren't into stickers, but a lot of people in these classes are into stickers. So this is what my laptop looks like. And these are all artifacts that signify what kind of is important to me. So this would be a good example of artifactual communication. It shows that I am into a lot of TV shows. So these are all different TV shows and movies that are important to me. So I have Riverdale, Grey's Anatomy. This is a book one. So it shows that I'm like really interested in pop culture, I think, and that's what it communicates about me. Friday Night Lights and Toy Story. Also, you can tell like I'm obsessed with books and reading, because all of these involve reading, as well as I'm passionate about education. It also communicates where I'm from and the organizations that I'm a part of. So take a look at your laptop and see kind of what your stickers communicate about you. The next type is touch communication. So this is also known as haptics. Haptics, H-A-P-T-I-C-S. So haptics, we use touch to display emotion. We might grab someone's arm if we're talking to them. There's also called ritual touching. So this is when it's out of habit or as part of a ritual, a cultural ritual. So for example, if you are in the Catholic Church, whenever you say the Lord's Prayer, you hold hands, or the priest blesses you, touches you on the forehead, things like that. We also use touch as a form of control, and we use it to be playful, as well as if we are engaged in some kind of activity. That's how we use touch. There are people that avoid touch, and that is also communicating. So if someone doesn't like to be hugged, that's communicating something about them. The next is paralanguage. So this is the things about our voice that aren't necessarily said, but they are communicating things. So things like taking pauses, using pitch. So if my voice is high pitched or low pitched, my volume, if I'm getting louder or maybe I'm getting quieter, the rate at which I'm talking. If I'm talking like this the whole entire time, you're not gonna be able to understand what I'm saying. So those are all examples: loudness, rhythm, pauses, and hesitations, as well as things like yawning, whispering, crying, yelling. Those are all forms of paralanguage. The next is silence. So silence actually communicates a lot. It gives us time to think, it can hurt people, it can lessen our anxiety, it can prevent communication, and it can communicate emotions. So silence is also a very important part of nonverbal communication. And then we have 2 more. The first is smell communication. Before I taught this class, I didn't think about it, but a lot of times we use smells to signify things. And the example that I think of is how a lot of stores have a certain scent. And you know that store smells like that, and so that's because they're trying to associate that smell with your experience in the store so that you come back and associate it with it. So it's called a memory message. And then the last one is how we use time. So this is called chronemics, which concerns the use of time. So chronemics, CHRONEMICS. And so this is how we use time. So are we punctual? Being punctual shows, do we care about other people's time? Do we value our own time? Do we value other people's time? Relationship time. How much time do we devote to different activities? Do I spend more time with my family than I do with my friends? Do I spend more time with my boyfriend than I do with my best friend? That's ways that we use time to communicate. Talk time. How do we utilize the time in the conversation? Am I dominating the conversation and not letting the other person talk? That would be an example of talk time. And then wait time is how long you wait for people. So that is kind of a quick run through of the 10 channels again. So if you'll be reminded, you have body, face, eye, space, artifactual, touch, paralanguage, silence, time, and smell. So those are the 10. If you're wanting to look at them a little bit more in depth, you can look at the PowerPoints, but that's just kind of a quick overview of it, and I will be posting shortly the activity that you'll be doing. Have a great day, and remember to maintain your social distance of 6 feet.